Welcome to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. There are many women who struggle to get pregnant or can't get pregnant at all, no matter how hard they try. 1 in 6 people will struggle with infertility. Those that turn to fertility clinics often unexpectedly come to realize that the average cost is $50,000, typically out of pocket. Flora Fertility is an organization that allows women to buy low-cost insurance to cover future fertility treatments, including egg freezing, IUI or intrauterine insemination, and IVF or in vitro fertilization. Today's topic is the future of fertility treatment funding. I'm joined by Laura McDonald, co-founder of Flora Fertility in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Laura, welcome to Empowered. Thank you for being us here today.
Thank you for having me, Elizabeth. Thrilled to be here.
So tell us about your career history.
So my career has really been, around creating products, true entrepreneur, I would say, and telling a story around that product. Early on, I worked in the financial services industry for a large investment firm, communication side, and then went off on my own and founded a digital media company that was focused on women and wealth. So this was back in 2010 when it was really a new thing to say, like the internet is where women are congregating to learn. And we were questioned, would they actually consume financial media online? We quickly grew, though, to reach millions of women through that voice. We had partnerships with all the major financial institutions and credit card companies and media outlets. And it was extremely fulfilling to build that. I ended up selling that to a brokerage firm, worked with a large insurance company for a few years, and fell in love with insurance, actually, that period of time. I never thought I would, but started seeing all the applications for it, which brought me to where I am today. And then I led strategy at a couple companies, and one we dove deep into insurtech. But it was really about 18 months ago that I started, along with a couple co-founders, conceiving Flora, which we'll sort of talk about today, seeing this need and this gap in the fertility space for more accessible funding and looking at an insurance solution around that.
Okay, so before we talk about Flora and the insurance solution, what about your personal life?
Yeah. So I have 4 kids. You know what? I've been so fortunate. Life is never what you expect it to be. I think I'm from Winnipeg, lived in Toronto, lived elsewhere. I'm actually at my cottage right now in Victoria Beach, Manitoba. But I met my husband when I was 21 years old. He was 9 years older. I ended up having my 3 kids back to back in my 20s. Nobody really does that anymore, but I was very fortunate. My pregnancies were great. I did not need fertility treatment, and I really took it for granted. 19 years ago, that's the age of my oldest daughter, people weren't talking about infertility. You actually, if you had the good fortune of not needing any sort of treatment, you took it for granted, like I said, and you didn't know the stories that others were going through and the challenges. Fast forward to today, it's a very hot topic. And so for me, just seeing others go through it was really what prompted me to develop Flora. But in the personal life, I've built my family. We've settled in Winnipeg, and that's been my journey and sort of juggling all that, but it's been very fulfilling to do that along with building my career.
Okay, so let's talk about Flora Fertility. How did it come to be, and what is fertility insurance?
Okay, so it came to be actually seeing my cousin, who's like a sister to me, go through fertility treatment. Like I said, my oldest is 19 years old. People weren't talking about it 19 years ago the way they are today. So when I saw my cousin go through it, and I remember going to her baby shower, she was very fortunate that it worked. She did have a beautiful little girl. Um, I heard the stories of those who were at that shower, and they were often others struggling with infertility, and hearing certainly about emotionally, it can be very challenging mentally, but also the financial challenges. People are exhausting their savings accounts. They're remortgaging their home. They're using credit cards to pay for it, if they're even able to come up with the amount that they need to undergo treatment. And there's no guarantees. And so, because of my background in financial media, in finance and insurance, I just kept on going to bed at night thinking, why have we not solved this yet? Why
Okay,
have we
hold that
not used an
thought.
insurance
Why
solution?
have we not solved this yet? Hold that thought. We'll be right back after this commercial break. Welcome back to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. The future of fertility treatment funding is today's topic. Now, Laura, before we went to commercial break, you were at your cousin's bridal baby shower, and you were talking to other women, and your question was, why have I not solved this yet?
Yeah, why have we not found better ways to pay for treatment? Why are we paying out of pocket, whether we're in the US or Canada? And certainly, while some states or provinces will help where they can, there's still a huge gap. And so that's where I really looked at insurance. I was fortunate to meet my two co-founders who were trying to solve the exact same problem. They had different stories that they brought to it, but insurance at its best is community. It's people coming together to fund one another's risk. And if we can do that for an underserved space like women's health and reproductive health, well, then we actually create financial power to have a lot of impact. And that's really how we looked at the insurance model and developed the first one around individual insurance for fertility coverage.
So, fertility insurance, is this the only one around? And how is it different from other options on the market?
So existing options in the fertility space, and there's been a lot of momentum in the past 5 years, so that's terrific across the board. But there's tended to be loans and financing, better than a credit card if you get a lower interest loan. But that said, it still costs you a significant amount. On the insurance side, it has tended to focus on group benefits for Fortune 500 companies. So great if you work for a Google or an RBC, but most of us don't, or we want to move jobs. And so we have this gap that 60 to 80% of people have no coverage. There has never been a private coverage around fertility insurance. And that is what we've developed. We've had to develop the individual risk models in order to give women as the primary policyholders the ability to own their reproductive health outcomes, no matter where they live or where they work. And so we're the first in creating this that really makes it accessible for everyone.
So, you've coined this positive impact insurance. What exactly does that mean?
Well, I think insurance gets a bad rap. And I have to tell you, when I worked for a large insurance company, that's when I fell in love with all the applications for insurance. But we tend to focus on life insurance, death, disability, critical illness, all very important to cover for those risks. But they can be very hard to acquire customers, especially at early ages, to those products. So we're really looking at a positive impact, something that's positively impacting your life, and you're willing to fund it. And it's actually in some ways similar to pet insurance. People pay out of pocket for pet insurance because they really care for that ability to have their fur baby and whatnot. We're really helping people build their families, and that's something that's in the more near future than thinking about something more catastrophic like death and disability.
People typically don't think about fertility until they want to have a baby, until they want to start this family. Are young women concerned about their future fertility now?
There has been a huge shift. If you talk to young women in their, let's say, late 20s, 30s, it is one of the hottest topics. So we've done a lot of research with this. We worked with a very large global women's health app. They're reaching women of reproductive health age who have, most of them have yet to have kids. And what we found was that 50% of their users were concerned about their future fertility and looking for solutions. And so it says that this is a tipping point. We need to develop solutions. And the World Health Organization has labeled infertility a global health issue in need of new mechanisms of funding. So if you can't afford to buy a home in your 20s, and most of us can't, you really can't afford to build a family in many cases. And that's why we're seeing this delay in having kids, but it's increasing the chances of infertility. And so a lot of women, couples, families are looking to add some security around that journey.
So, why has this never been done before? It seems like one of those things that, you can't believe hasn't already existed, especially amongst all the other insurance products.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's really about building the individual risk models. So, insurance companies often rely on insurtechs to create new models, to build the data sets. They do have a ton of data again on death and disability and mortality tables. But when it comes to a new insurance class, that's where insurtechs like us step in. So we have spent the past 18 plus months building out those risk models, the risk data sets, looking at public and private coverage. And I'll really give a shout out to my two co-founders, Dr. Christy Lane, Stanford medical prof, was one of the first to look at wearables and how we use them for lifestyle, for underwriting, for life insurance. She's been studying fertility going back 20 years. And then my
Okay,
other co-founder, Somel Jain, a chief actuary at some big insurance companies.
Laura, hold that thought. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. The future of fertility treatment funding is today's topic. So, sorry, Laura, you were talking about Somel Jain. Please continue.
Yeah, so two co-founders of Flora, myself, Dr. Christy Lane, and Somel Jain. And Somel is based in the New York area. He was the chief actuary at some major digital insurance companies. And we were fortunate to meet him through our work with InsurTech New York. And he was just so instrumental to everything we were doing that he came on as a third co-founder. So it's really interesting the way the three of us came together, not knowing each other a couple of years ago. We were all just trying to tackle the same problem or thinking about it. And I find it quite serendipitous the way different people can come into your life and you can end up being business partners with them and truly building something, hopefully industry and life changing.
So, life changing, yes. What does the next year and 5 years look like for fertility insurance and basically the fertility landscape in general?
Yeah, so over the next 5 years, um, it's possible that the demand for fertility treatment will go up. We likely anticipate that. Fortunately, there's starting to be a little bit more supply in terms of providers, particularly in the US. Again, this is a very hot topic in the venture capital space, and so we're getting a lot of funding towards it. The good news is the science is often getting better, so we can get more successful outcomes with treatments. And in terms of the sort of insurance landscape, we do anticipate that there should be more coverage, whether it's through group coverage, whether it's through individual coverage like our own, to hopefully make it more affordable for all of us to be able to build our families and really have, I guess, the fulfillment that I was fortunate to have in building mine.
So, you talked about the United States. How is your model impacted by the reproductive health and IVF debates in the United States? For example, the challenge to IVF rights in let's say, Alabama.
Yeah, well, it's certainly been something we have to monitor. It's certainly been concerning. While we are based in Canada and some of my partners are in the US, the US is a very it's it's our primary market. And so what I will say about our model that is slightly unique is that in terms of coverage, we really cover the clinical path. And that starts from diagnostics to medication to IUI to IVF. So it is very concerning that there are restrictions in those states, but there's a lot of coverage that can come before that and hopefully success. Generally, you can have 80 to 90% of people be successful even pre-IVF. But those who do still need IVF, with our type of coverage, they could move to another state and use their coverage there. So we're really trying to still make it accessible and hopefully where there are barriers, give you other options.
So your focus is fertility insurance. Is Flora looking at expanding into other women's health markets or products?
Well, absolutely. If you are having a baby when you're, approaching 40 years old or in your 40s, you're probably in perimenopause at the same time. And so that is also an underserved market, right? When we get into perimenopause and menopause, there's still a lot of treatments and expenses that are borne out of pocket by women. By creating this community, again, looking at insurance as community, we're creating dollars to fund those underserved markets. So really our goal is to look at reproductive health across the spectrum, pre-fertility, having kids, and post-fertility and into peri and menopause. So it's important that we create funding for those areas.
So, as a female founded business, and you're focused on women's health, I know that a lot of females are having problems fundraising, having people coming in and investing in their companies. How has fundraising been for you?
I'll say it's going well. It's true that most venture capital dollars, very little go to female founders. And I think there's also the challenge that it's hard to be a female founder. You're
Mm-hmm.
taking on the caregiving role so often and then to build a business, you need sufficient capital. To just have, $10,000 given to you, you can't do much with that. And so I'd say there's more and more venture capital firms that are looking to invest in female founders, to underserved founders. For us, we're in a great space. So choose your market wisely. Be very passionate about what you're building. We're oversubscribed on our round, so that's fantastic. But it takes opening. We've had hundreds and hundreds of phone calls with VCs and angels. So you have to be having those calls nonstop, and you will never stop fundraising, but you need that capital to properly grow your business.
So, when we come back, we will still talk about fertility insurance and other tips. So, don't go away. Welcome back to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. The future of fertility treatment funding is today's topic. I'm joined by Laura McDonald, co-founder of Flora Fertility. Now, we were talking about raising capital, venture capital. It's always very difficult for women. Do you have any tips that you can give to others wanting to raise venture capital?
I think whether you're woman, man, whomever, you really just have to get into that habit of selling yourself. You have to be out there connecting with people on LinkedIn, sharing your story, asking for intros, networking. It takes a lot of effort. But if you have, again, a compelling product, a compelling idea, have a fantastic pitch deck, people will open doors for you. It's amazing to see how talking to one person about it can lead to an intro to another, and that chain continues. And what I will find is in venture capital, they're very friendly. They want to help. It may not be a fit for them, but they're very willing to open the door to other firms or angels who may be a fit. It's a very supportive community. So really just get out there and think beyond your borders, think beyond your city, think beyond your province or state. Really think big, because you will need national and sort of global dollars and presence to build a significant business.
So, I want to talk about the fertility insurance. Sometimes when you're getting health insurance or disability or critical illness, you have to go through a process. Some insurances are very easy, some are a little bit more difficult. What's the process of getting fertility insurance, and how difficult is it to get it?
So this is pretty unique to us because we're the first in this space. So we can't go into a ton of detail there until we officially launch, but it's called underwriting. So that it's a digital application online for us. We don't need to send somebody to your home to get urine and paramed and blood. We look at a few key factors for underwriting. Age is definitely the main factor. That is the biggest fertility risk. So depending on when you buy the policy, the younger you are, as with most type of insurance, the less expensive those premiums will be, and they will stay relatively consistent life of the policy. So incentive to buy young. We actually see a big demographic of parents interested in buying fertility insurance for their young adult children, because not only are parents funding your university college education these days, your mortgage down payment, your home down payment, but they're also funding the fertility treatment in a lot of instances.
Interesting.
So yeah. And then when you reach for young women who are focusing on careers, their post grad, then they're more interested in buying it for themselves, and they have more disposable income to do so.
Okay, so we've been talking about buying this insurance. What is the cost for somebody in their 20s, 30s, 40s?
For us, I mean, it certainly depends on your risk profile, but if you are young, if you're in your early 20s, it can be the cost of a Netflix subscription, $15, $20 a month. And then from day one of becoming a policyholder, you get access to certain perks and value discounts, education, content, support if needed. So there's value from day one. It's about developing that community and building that around you. If you're in your 30s and buying the policy for the first time, you will have more stringent underwriting, and it might be closer to $70, $100 a month. But the actual actuarial models take into account that you'll probably hold that policy for a shorter period of time before you may use it. And so that's how we look at premium and pricing and risk.
So, Laura, we have 30 seconds left towards the end of the show. What words of wisdom would you have for someone who is struggling to have a child right now and just thinks that, everything is black around them? So what would you say to them?
When I was really kind of researching in this space, one stat I found that was really compelling for me, and it was that 90% of cases are actually treatable. Now, in the US, only 2% are currently accessing treatment, again, because of these barriers. So do know that there's great treatments out there. There's amazing doctors. The science is getting better. There's so much innovation happening in this space. So it's very possible. And the other good news is that there's more and more options becoming available, like Flora, like group benefits, to help you to fund that treatment. So just know that there's many people working to make this happen for you. And ideally, we can also help you form some support and find like-minded others going through it as well.
Thank you so much, Laura.
Thank you.
I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.